Now, for more on the annual pilgrimage and how some entrepreneurs see the Hajj as a business opportunity, we're joined by Mahmoud Amin El Gamal from Houston. He's an economics and statistics professor and chair of Islamic finance and management at Rice University. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, as we just heard there about this growing popularity of mobile apps for Hajj pilgrims, so other than tech companies, what are some other types of businesses that are really taking advantage of this Hajj season?
Well, I mean, the Hajj has traditionally been an opportunity for commerce. So there are all sorts of old economy, people selling rugs and clothes and fans and radios. And then there are all the new technology vendors, as you've just covered with software.
So we have a lot of the old meets new getting together here. So how do these entrepreneurial efforts fall in line with the purpose of Hajj?
Well, the purpose of Hajj, actually, as stated in Scripture, is primarily commerce as well as worship. So the story in Scripture is that Abraham, when he left his son Ishmael there, prayed to God to make this a place that people will flock to. And traditionally, there were 4 safe months when people traveled to this area to conduct commerce. So commerce was always at the center of Hajj from its very inception.
Now, there are some people who unfortunately have been taking advantage of people. We've seen a number of incidents involving Hajj-related travel agencies and brokers giving pilgrims fake documents or sometimes even selling the same hotel room to several different customers. And I can imagine this can be heartbreaking, especially if this is a once-in-a-lifetime event for some people. How big of a concern is fraud when it comes to traveling for Hajj?
Well, it's a very big concern. Now, overbooking happens in all forms of travel, right? In airlines, in hotels. But it's particularly problematic when you're in a small city like Mecca and there are 2 million people who are competing for rooms. It's very hard to find secondary accommodations. So it can be very difficult for people. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody who doesn't get the room they were promised was a victim of fraud. In some cases, it's just pure incompetence. And for those like myself who've been there, it's a very, very hectic time. So many people come back and they don't know if they've been victims of fraud or just unfortunate circumstances.
Certainly difficult. Obviously, you have hundreds of thousands of people descending in one area. Now, Islamic financing rules do lay out acceptable ways to invest. So is there a way for some of these legitimate travel services to coexist with the sacredness of the pilgrimage?
Yeah, so again, there's no separation between the sacred and the profane here. It's perfectly legitimate to have travel agencies in all forms of commerce. How to finance the trip of Hajj is the problematic part because there's great excess demand. 2 to 3 million people usually go there, and there are millions more who are trying to go every year. So they bid up the prices, and lately, religious scholars have said that it's permissible to actually pay the Hajj expenses in installments. So traditionally, you had to have the money ahead of time for it to be an obligation on you. But it's still permissible to finance it in a variety of ways, and that may allow people to partake in packages that are sold by more legitimate and higher-paying travel agencies that can guarantee the rooms and the transport. Yeah.
Now, one thing that we are seeing from Saudi authorities, they're saying that the number of Hajj pilgrims has actually fallen this year and that those who do come aren't spending as much. What sort of an impact do you think that's going to have on the tourism industry?
Well, Saudi Arabia relies on the tourism industry quite heavily. It's 2.5% of their gross domestic product, so it's something in the order of $20 billion. And this is a year when Saudi Arabia is suffering financially. They're hemorrhaging about $100 billion a year in deficits. I think possibly people are afraid of viruses and other illnesses. And they're also suffering the economic consequences of the sluggish growth globally.
Something definitely a lot of countries can relate to. Thank you so much for joining us. Our thanks to Professor Mahmoud Amin El Gamal. Thank you for joining us.